The old Santos Jewelry sign still hung above the shop door, its gold lettering faded after 30 years of sun and rain. From my office window across the street, I could see my sister Diana arranging displays, just as our father had taught her, just as he had refused to teach me. Jewelry is an art, Sophia, he'd said countless times. It requires a delicate touch, an eye for beauty. Your sister understands this. You're too focused on numbers. Numbers. The very thing that had helped me build Santos International, the luxury retail empire that was about to swallow their precious family store whole. Not that they knew that yet. Not that they knew the mysterious CEO of their biggest competitor was the daughter they deemed unqualified to run a single jewelry shop. Life has a way of coming full circle. 10 years earlier, absolutely not. My father's voice echoed through the back office of Santos Jewelry, making the antique mirrors on the walls tremor slightly. The business goes to Diana. End of discussion. I stood my ground, the business proposal I'd spent months preparing clutched in my hands. At 24, I had just completed my MBA, graduating top of my class from Wharton. Diana, at 27, had spent the past 5 years working in the shop, learning the art of jewelry from our father. Dad, just look at the numbers, I pleaded. The market is changing. Online retail is growing exponentially. If we don't adapt, numbers, he spat the word like it was poison. This business was built on personal relationships, on craftsmanship, on tradition. Your grandfather didn't build this store by staring at spreadsheets. No, I thought. He built it by being smart enough to buy property in what would become the most expensive shopping district in the city. By understanding that luxury was about more than just the product. The proposal includes maintaining the personal touch. I tried again. But we can expand, create an online presence, develop a global brand. Enough. He slammed his hand on the vintage mahogany desk, the same desk where my grandfather had first taught him about diamonds. Diana understands this business. She has the artist's eye, the personal touch. You turn this into some soulless corporation. Diana sat in a corner, pretending to examine a sapphire under her loupe. But I caught her smirk. She had known this was coming, had probably encouraged it. Dad, please, one last try. The numbers don't lie. Foot traffic is down 30% from last year. Online competitors are eating into our market share. We need to evolve. He walked to the wall, where photographs chronicled 3 generations of Santos jewelers. My grandfather opening the store in 1960, my father taking over in 1990, and soon Diana would be the next in line. This store is our legacy, he said, his voice softer but no less firm. It's about heritage, about maintaining the standards your grandfather set. Diana understands that. You destroy everything we've built. I looked at my sister, still pretending to study the sapphire. She had never gone to college, never studied business or economics. But she could spend hours talking about cut and clarity, could charm customers with stories about each piece's unique energy. So that's it? I asked quietly. All my education, all my ideas, they mean nothing because I see jewelry as a business instead of an art. You're young, he said dismissively. You'll learn there's more to life than numbers and profits. Maybe if you spent more time actually working with the jewelry instead of hiding behind your computer. I tried. The words burst out before I could stop them. I've been trying since I was 16, but every time I asked to learn, you sent me to do inventory or update the books. Diana got to learn about diamonds. I got to count them. Because that's where your talents lie. He threw up his hands in exasperation. You're good with numbers, with organization. That's valuable, but it's not what this business needs in a leader. Diana finally looked up from her sapphire. He's right, Sophia. You've never had the passion for the jewelry itself. You see them as commodities, not treasures. The way she said it, so reasonable, so sympathetic, made it worse somehow. Like I was a child who couldn't understand basic truths. Fine. I placed my proposal on his desk, watching as my carefully prepared charts and projections scattered across the antique wood. But remember this moment. Remember what you're choosing and what you're throwing away. Don't be dramatic, Diana sighed. You can still work here, handle the books, manage inventory. Those are important too. I almost laughed. She was offering me a glorified clerk position, like it was some great favor. No thank you. I straightened my shoulders, looking my father in the eye. I resign. Sophia, effective immediately. I turned to the door, then paused. One last thing. Those numbers you don't want to look at. They show that without major changes, you'll lose 50% of your market share within 5 years. But I'm sure Diana's artist's eye will fix that. I walked out of Santos Jewelry for what I thought was the last time. Behind me, I heard Diana's voice. She'll calm down. She always does. But I didn't calm down. Instead, I got to work. My first stop was Grace Chen's office. Grace had been my mentor during business school and now ran one of the most successful venture capital firms in the city. I was wondering when you'd show up, she said as I walked in. Let me guess. They chose tradition over innovation. I nodded, sinking into one of her modern leather chairs, so different from the antiques that filled Santos Jewelry. They gave it to Diana. Said I'm not qualified because I care more about numbers than the art of jewelry. Grace smiled, but it wasn't a sympathetic smile. It was the smile of a predator who smelled opportunity. Good. Good? I stared at her. How is this good? Because now you're free. She leaned forward, her eyes intense. Tell me, Sophia, if you were building a jewelry business from scratch today, would you do it like your father's store? God, no. The answer came instantly. I'd start digital first, but with strategic physical locations in key markets. Build a brand that combines traditional luxury with modern convenience. Create an experience that... Stop. She held up her hand. You just outlined the business plan I've been waiting for someone to pitch. The luxury jewelry market is ripe for disruption, but all the startups I see are either too traditional or too digital. Nobody's cracked the hybrid model. My heart started beating faster. What are you saying? I'm saying, she smiled again, that I have $20 million looking for the right investment. Show me a detailed plan and it's yours. I spent the next 3 months living on coffee and determination. My apartment became a war room, walls covered with market research, competitor analyses, and supply chain diagrams. I reached out to contacts I'd made during my MBA, connecting with diamond dealers, manufacturers, and retail experts. The plan came together piece by piece. Not just an online jewelry store, but a complete luxury experience platform. Customers could browse online, but then schedule private showings in intimate boutique spaces. Each piece would come with a digital story, not just about its specifications, but about its journey from mind to market. I called it Luna Lux after my grandmother Lucia, who had taught me my first lessons about business while my sister was learning about jewelry. When I presented the final plan to Grace, she didn't say anything for a long time. Just read through every page, making small notes in the margins. Finally, she looked up. 30 million. For 30%. I blinked. You said 20. That was before I saw this. She tapped the business plan. This isn't just a jewelry company. This is the future of luxury retail. Within 6 months, Luna Lux launched its first boutique, directly across the street from Santos Jewelry. My father and sister never realized who was behind it. The CEO of Luna Lux was listed as Sophia Luna, using my middle name. Just another competitor in an increasingly crowded market. But we weren't just another competitor. Everything I had learned about jewelry, about luxury, about what customers really wanted, it all went into Luna Lux. While Santos Jewelry clung to their traditional model, we innovated. Our online platform was seamless, beautiful, and user-friendly. Our boutiques were intimate and elegant, staffed by experts who understood both jewelry and technology. We didn't just sell pieces, we created experiences. And we grew. Fast. Within 2 years, Luna Lux had boutiques in 5 major cities. Our online sales exceeded all projections. The press called us the Apple of jewelry retail, a perfect blend of tradition and innovation. I watched from my office as Santos Jewelry struggled to adapt. They finally launched a website, but it was clunky and outdated. They tried social media, but Diana's posts about jewelry energy and crystal vibrations only emphasized how out of touch they were. The numbers I had predicted were proving true. Their market share was declining exactly as I had forecast. The only difference was that instead of losing customers to various competitors, they were losing them primarily to Luna Lux. Grace called me one morning, 5 years after we'd launched. Have you seen the latest figures? Just finished reviewing them, I replied, looking at the reports on my screen. Luna Lux now controlled 40% of the luxury jewelry market in our region. Santos Jewelry's share had dropped to 5%. They're going to have to sell, she said. The question is, Are you ready to tell them who's buying? I looked out my window at the old shop, at the faded sign that had once represented everything I couldn't have. Not yet, I said. Let them struggle a little longer. Let them realize exactly what they gave up when they decided I wasn't qualified. You're cold, Grace laughed. I love it. But it wasn't about being cold. It wasn't even about revenge, not really. It was about proving something, to them, to myself, to everyone who thought tradition mattered more than innovation. And I was about to prove it in the most dramatic way possible. The letter arrived at Santos Jewelry on a Tuesday morning. I watched through my office window as the courier handed it to Diana. Saw her expression change as she read the elegant letterhead, Luna Lux Holdings. My phone buzzed, our head of security alerting me that my father had just entered the building. Right on schedule. Diana must have called him immediately. I took my time preparing for the meeting, carefully selecting my outfit, a custom-made suit that cost more than Santos Jewelry's monthly revenue. The necklace I wore was one of our latest designs, a piece that perfectly embodied Luna Lux's blend of tradition and innovation. They're here, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Santos looks agitated. Give them 5 minutes in the waiting room, I replied. Let them feel what it's like to wait for someone else's decision. I stood at my window, watching their shop across the street. The displays Diana had arranged this morning looked tired, outdated, like a museum piece rather than a living business. A full acquisition proposal, I finished for him. Luna Lux will purchase Santos Jewelry at a premium over its current market value. The Santos name will become a heritage line within our brand, preserving grandfather's legacy while bringing it into the modern era. And what happens to us? Diana asked quietly. That depends. I walked to my window, looking down at their store. Dad, you can take a comfortable retirement. Diana, you can stay on as a creative consultant for the heritage line, if you're willing to learn new ways of doing things. And if we refuse, my father's old stubbornness crept into his voice. I turned back to face them. Then you'll be bankrupt within 6 months. The bank is already considering calling your loans. When that happens, you'll lose everything, the store, the inventory, even the building grandfather bought so wisely. Diana started to cry. My father put his hand over hers. You're just like your mother, he said softly. She always saw things so clearly, so practically. I should have remembered that. Mom had died when I was 12, but she had taught me my first lessons about business, about seeing beyond the surface to what really mattered. She also taught me about value, I replied, about knowing what things are truly worth. This offer, it's worth more than your pride. I pressed another button, and new images appeared on the screen, renderings of what Santos Jewelry could become as part of Luna Lux. We'll restore the building, modernize the interior while preserving its historic character. The Santos collection will have its own dedicated space, telling the story of 3 generations of craftsmanship. But it will also have all the technological innovations that make Luna Lux successful. My father stood, walking to the screen. I saw him studying the images, seeing how we could preserve his father's legacy while building something new. The papers need to be signed by Friday, I said quietly. After that, the bank will make its own decisions. Why? Diana's voice was barely a whisper. Why offer us anything? You've already won. I walked to my office wall, where a single piece of jewelry sat in a display case, my first attempt at design, made when I was 16. Dad had called it crude, unartistic, but it had taught me something important about creation and value, because despite everything, we're family, and family businesses aren't just about profit. They're about legacy, about building something that lasts. My father turned from the screen, his eyes wet. We were wrong, he said simply. About you, about everything. Yes, I agreed. You were. The question is, are you ready to admit that publicly? Because when this deal is announced, everyone will know that the daughter you rejected as unqualified built the company that saved your business. Diana stood, squaring her shoulders. I can live with that humiliation. It's better than watching Dad's legacy disappear completely. I nodded, pressing the intercom. Send in the lawyers. The next hour passed in a blur of signatures and legal terms. By the end, Santos Jewelry was officially part of Luna Lux Holdings. My father looked both relieved and devastated. As they prepared to leave, I handed them each a small box, a gift to mark the occasion. Inside each box was a piece from Luna Lux's first collection, the line I had personally designed, combining traditional craftsmanship with modern aesthetics. These are. Diana held up her necklace, studying it with her jeweler's eye. These are extraordinary. The design, the execution. This is what you meant about blending old and new. The pieces you dismissed as soulless, I reminded her, because they started with market research instead of artistic inspiration. My father put his box down unopened. I was a fool, he said quietly, a prideful old fool who couldn't see that the future was standing right in front of him. The past cannot be changed, I replied, quoting our grandfather's favorite saying. But the future is always under construction. After they left, I stood at my window for a long time, watching the sun set behind the Santos Jewelry sign. Tomorrow, workers would begin removing it, preparing for the rebranding. The old store would become something new, something that honored its history while embracing its future. Grace called just as I was preparing to leave. I saw the papers came through. How did it feel? I thought about my father's face when he realized who I was, about Diana's shocked recognition, about the moment they understood that the daughter they rejected had become their salvation. It felt. I paused, searching for the right word. It felt like coming full circle. And the reveal? Was it as satisfying as you'd hoped? I looked at the old photos on my phone, the ones from that last day at Santos Jewelry when they told me I wasn't qualified. Better, I said, because it wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. The next morning, as workers began transforming Santos Jewelry into its new identity, I sat in my office preparing for the press conference. The headlines would be dramatic. Luna Lux CEO revealed as rejected Santos Harris. Family business drama ends in corporate takeover. But those headlines missed the real story. This wasn't about revenge or humiliation. It was about innovation triumphing over tradition, about seeing the future when others could only see the past. And as I watched my father and sister arrive for their first day as Luna Lux employees, I realized something else. Sometimes the greatest success isn't in defeating your doubters, but in transforming them into believers. The empire I built next door hadn't just consumed their business, it had shown them a new way forward. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most valuable thing I created. Not bad for someone who was unqualified.